Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on day 5 of my focus month on new age related music. Um, Synergy's third album called Chords. This is actually Semiconductor. This is actually a compilation, but it has a couple tracks off Chords. So I thought I'd put it here as a placement. I don't have chords in physical form. Um, it's came out in 1978. Again, it was his third album. He started out. He's basically a synthesizer player from America, from New Jersey. He started out working with like progressive artists like Nectar. He was part of Peter Gabriel's ensemble and touring band for over a decade, from 1976 all the way to like 87. He played on things like H2O by Daryl Hall and John Oates. He played sporadically with Nectar. He played on Eclipse from the Heart, the main keyboard part on Bonnie Tyler's huge hit. Of course, he was once he started playing with Nectar, the guys from Passport Records signed him to a multi-record deal. I think he ended up doing about 8 records in total on Passport Records, which was the home of Nectar, Camel, and Brand X, among others. So, strong progressive rock label in the 70s and 80s. But he also did a lot of stuff for Disney and TV shows and science fiction films and things like that. And, quite an accomplished career that he's had since the middle 70s. In some respect, he's kind of, one of the early pioneers of being a synthesizer player and sort of making new age music, but also then eventually incorporating some guitars in there as well. So he's always been like a household name. If you're in a new age in the 70s and 80s, most people know Synergy's music. I don't know what really is probably considered his best album by people out there in general that followed and heard his albums. I would think probably for the most part it's probably either Chords or Sequencer. What's your second and third album? Those are probably considered a couple of his best ones. I really like the cover work for Chords. I wish I did have the albums because it does have really cool cover art. This album is it's a good balance of spacey and dynamic. So it does have a good balance of that. Some of the keyboard, one thing that's really excellent about this album, if you're into I wish I was a little bit more into like knowing the keyboard sounds as soon as I hear them. I'm not the best at that, but I'm probably close. But I don't like to guess a lot of times on what instrument it might be unless I know for a fact. But if you're interested in the evolution of keyboard sounds and synthesizer sounds, I think you'll be impressed by the keyboard and synthesizer sounds on this album. They're very powerful, and they all have a good balance of, a good balance of, there's more minimalism, less sort of major chords, and a little bit of experimentalism in here, but still sort of making songs with keyboard as the main lead of the song, the main hook of the song. I think this album has a little bit less sort of corniness or cheesiness that maybe later Synergy albums do. Like Metropolitan Suite is a little bit cheesy. That's going mid 80s. Maybe even Audion or Audion. I think it's Audio. Is it Audion? Audion. That album, a little bit cheesier. Some of the 80s, it sort of gets into a little bit of organ music. Maybe it's still sort of synthesizer music, but There's just something about the early sounds of like 1978. Like the keyboards on this and the synthesizers on here are just have such a beefy, powerful, spacey, tones on here. It's just it kind of solidifies why so many people are trying to buy some of those vintage sounds because they just sound amazing. And this is back in the early days when some of these keyboards were and these synthesizers were fairly hard to keep in tune and program, and you can kind of hear that a little bit on here. Um, it's kind of almost verging on some of them are kind of going out of tune and sort of. I think there was one in here. Can't remember which track it was. Might have been the Phobos, but it's sort of maybe the second part of track two, the Demos part, but it sort of becomes like it's becoming out of tune and sort of adds a nice unique kind of charm to the song because it's just it's kind of losing its key of note of being able to keep the tone. But yeah, this album has I think 10 tracks, right? 9 tracks or 10? 10 tracks. The first track, on Presuming to Be Modern, it's a very solid opener. I give it 3 stars. My favorite track is actually the second track, and it's kind of a 2-part, named after is it Jupiter's moons, Phobos and Deimos, or is that Saturn's moons? I always forget. I think it's Saturn's moons. Maybe it's Jupiter's. Can't remember. First part, just overall, is a really cool track. It's my favorite on the album. The first half is kind of a new age keyboard part, but then sort of after the minimal sort of break and nice sequencer rhythm, the track goes a little bit eerie and the underlying tones kind of come out, the underlying melody comes out. I feel like it's one of the deeper tracks he's ever done. Much more minimal and drawn out than a lot of his tracks. This one's verging on 7.5 minutes. A lot of times Larry Fast's tracks under Synergy can be a little bit on the shorter side. This one part, since there's 2 parts, is kind of more drawn out, and I feel like it's more of a piece that has a lot. It has a lot of different layers, and it tells a story more so than some of the slower songs that feel like kind of a little bit more towards poppy music. But I really like Phobos and Deimos Go to Mars. I guess they're moons of Mars then, right? That sounds more right. 3.5 stars. My favorite track on here. Sketches of Mythical Beasts, 2.25 stars. Disruption of World Communications, probably my least favorite on here. I have it 1.5 stars. It's kind of dramatic, but it really it's kind of a preference thing. Sometimes when Larry Fast and Synergy becomes a little frantic and kind of cheesy, it just becomes a little too poppy sounding, a little too, I don't know, like maybe kind of on the cheesier side of like a movie soundtrack. It's just a preference thing for me. It's not that it's not well done and still sounds cool. It's just kind of, I don't know, some kind of major kind of keyboard line that kind of is a touch spacey. It kind of becomes a little cheesy sometimes. I think if you know New Age, you know what I'm talking about. But I think it's kind of the equivalent in prog rock where there's some kind of crazy solo that for me is kind of out of place, and you're just like, okay, he's going on a 3-minute solo in a progressive rock sound. Okay, it's cool. Yeah, you're a great player, but it doesn't really do anything for me. Like I kind of feel like that's the equivalent in New Age music is when the main hook of the song or main keyboards is just too over the top. I kind of like kind of gets a little too cheesy for me. And here And I think that's because the name of the song, "Disruption of World Communications," is kind of dramatic, and you know, I think Synergy, for the most part, is very kind of soundtrack, and he does try to place the music towards what the theme of it is. So I get it. He's sort of making a dramatic kind of turn of events, like in a story, but I just prefer more minimal, maybe minor chords and sort of a different way of doing it than sort of making such an obvious dramatic song. But yeah, 1.5 stars. Track 5, a lot better. The track's called "On Presuming to Be Modern" Part 2. This is part 2 of the opener. I really like this one as well. 2 3/4 stars. I think it'd be really nice to put those two together and sort of bridge them into one track. Would be really cool. A small collection of chords. This is a short track. It's only 1 minute and 25 seconds. I give it 2 stars, as well as I did "Full Moon Flyer," which is the longest track on here, 7 minutes and 43 seconds. I gave it 2 stars. I think it is kind of leaning on a cheesier track as well. I don't find too much deepness in there, but I think like some people, I don't know. I don't know how these tracks sort of, like, if you're really into progressive rock and you hear these tracks that are more straightforward and sort of, I guess sort of like a keyboard, it would be more of a guitar-led track. It's just a keyboard guitar track, but it's still, in a way, spacey and maybe a little bit psychedelic or what have you. But I'm wondering if, like, space rock fans, how they feel about something like "Full Moon Flyer." That's pretty straightforward and kind of verging on cheesiness. Like, I wonder, do you guys get that same feeling I do? Like, it's just kind of like sometimes the guitar solos and more straightforward style of progressive rock can be more towards the cheesier side. I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel that way on new age music. Like, I rather, again, like the more drawn out minimal stuff. Like Terra Incognita, the track number 8. It's darker, more eerie, more spacey, more depth, good layering, good blending, good evolution of the keyboard sounds. It's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. 3 1/4 stars on this track. This is one of the better ones. Track 9 and 10 are good versions of the opposite of they are more straightforward and wouldn't say poppy on the melody side, but they are kind of in that vein. Track number 9, Trellis, 2 3/4 stars, and then "On Presuming to Be Mode," I guess that's 3. "On Presuming to Be," I might have cut off something on the title of the song, but "On Presuming to Be Mode," round 3 or something like that. I can't remember the name of the track, but I have that 2.5 stars. So those ones are better examples of the ones that are sort of more straightforward. So it does end on a better note than a lot of the middle part. But I really like the first couple tracks, and then tracks 1 and 2, and then tracks 5, and then 8, 9, and 10 are pretty solid overall. When I add up the stars, it's a 25.5 stars divided by 10 songs, which is 2.55, which is around a 61, 62. I gave it a couple extra points for it being probably the better, more complete version of an album by Synergy, as far as like the most well-rounded of his albums. I gave it a 64 out of 100. Really, just the opportunities, a little bit of cheesiness here and there, and I just would like more minimalism, more power, more things done with this powerful keyboard sounds that are on here. Just a little more spacey, a little bit more droney. I would like. Maybe not as straightforward trying to make songs on here. And sometimes I feel like Synergy tries to make songs on here. But, I wouldn't do a New Age focus month without including Synergy on here. He's always been one of my earliest finds when it comes to New Age music. I think I discovered his music in the early 90s, and, I've always... he's always kind of probably been one of the oldest ones that I've found, and so he's always had a kind of special place in my heart, in my collection, for his music, because he was one of the artists that first got me into new age. So it's fitting and it's important that I include him in here, on my focus month on new age related albums. But yeah, 64 out of 100 for Synergy's third album, called Chords. Yeah, curious if you have any opinion on this album, or do you like any of Synergy's music? All right, thanks so much.